Did you know that I have a course called Women Who Lead that will change everything about how you interact with humans? You'll learn how to make things safe, logical, fun, and memorable so that people will listen to you and love you a little bit more than they already do. All you have to do is go to www.aimwithus.com and click on courses, and it will take you to everything you need to know. I hope to see you there.
Welcome to Productive Joy with Dr. Christy, where fun meets action.
Hi, friends. Welcome to Productive Joy, and we are in for a super treat today. I have my new friend Sara with me, but before I introduce Sara, I need you to follow this podcast. I know I say it every time, but it's because it matters. If you don't follow, you don't know about great people like Sara, and Sara's going to change your life today because she's going to help you figure out how to get the book out of you that is in there, we know. So Sara Stibitz is a lot of things. She is an author and an author coach and a ghostwriter, but she's also a mom to a beautiful 8-year-old girl named Lily. She's a traveler. She has a healing practice on the side because this is her main thing. And she's also got a wonderful partner named Ryan. And she's a very creative person. And when I asked about creative, she said cooking, writing, and artwork, which I love that combination. And today she's our guest. So Sara, welcome to Productive Joy.
Thank you for having me.
Are you ready? Are you excited?
I am.
Okay, take a
Yes.
deep breath. And sometimes it's a lot, right? I'm a lot. I know this. Bold flame. It's okay. So, Sara, I want you to convince people that you have something they need. Can you do that in like 30 seconds? Can you just get people super excited about the next 30 minutes?
Yeah. So what I love most about helping people who have stories tucked away inside of them is the transformative process of helping them bring them out. And there are so many people out there who want to write a book and who haven't said it out loud or articulated it. And, I really believe everyone can write a book and everyone has a story to tell or a message to share. And so what I hope to help listeners do today is to build the confidence and start to believe that they can tell their story and put the steps towards it, as well as help them with a few tips and ideas for getting started.
I love it. And I couldn't agree more. So having written a book myself, actually
Yeah.
too, I love the process, but the process is a process and
Yeah.
it's one that really needs that guide. So you guide people through the process of writing. Tell us more about how you landed in that space.
Yeah, it's actually kind of a circuitous route. I didn't start out as a writer. I didn't major in writing at school. I started out in the legal field actually as an investigator for criminal defense officers and public defenders. And I also worked in civil rights as well. So I did that for 9 years, and then I had a really big life change. My mom passed away. I left a 9-year relationship. And I was suddenly left questioning, like, is this life? And I liked my job, but I remember going into the office one day and realizing, is this really it? And I had a few serendipitous moments that made me really start to question. And I had to think, what's the one thing I'm sure I've always wanted to do? And the only thing I was very clear about was traveling. I knew I wanted to travel somewhere alone. And so I quit my job and I went backpacking through South America for 6 months by
Oh my
myself.
gosh.
And honestly, when I left my job, I thought I was done with writing. Yes, because I was writing legal reports and they were legal analyses and I had to be very neutral and I had to present facts in an unbiased way. And there really wasn't a lot of joy. Someone was always mad, no matter what I wrote.
Sure.
Yeah. So I thought, I was like, I'm done with this. Whatever I do next won't be this. But I wrote quite a lot while I was backpacking because I wanted to keep a blog so my family would stay updated. But people liked my writing and it started to get shared. And pretty soon someone asked she ran a magazine and she said, can I have someone interview you about your story? And I said, can I write the story?
Yeah.
And she was like, that's even better. And so from there, it just started with articles and then I became a freelance writer. And I think 2 years into that journey, someone pushed me into books. And I've always been an avid reader. For those of you who are watching, you can see the bookshelf behind
See
me,
all your
right?
books.
Yeah. So if you're listening, I have a large bookshelf behind me. But I didn't have the confidence at the time. I really was like, I can't do books. So it was a friend of mine asking me to edit And he looked at me, he's like, yes, you can, and you're going to do it. And he was right. And it was very instinctual from the beginning. So the journey has transformed, and now I walk people through the act of becoming writers and then authors if they choose to publish. And it's been a really big privilege to walk beside people as they create these big pieces of their story, pieces of their message. And yeah, it's been a lot of joy along the way.
I love it. And I have like 19 questions. Okay, so let me back up to the first question that I have. 6 months by yourself,
Yeah.
backpacking.
Yeah.
That's not like I'm going to take a trip. Like that's a journey. So why
Yeah.
did you pick the spot you picked, and why for so long? Like what, I mean, I say so long. I actually, one of my son's best friends did this right after college. He was supposed to be gone for like 3 weeks and he was gone for 6 months. So I think it
Yeah.
kind of evolves that way. But did you set out to be gone for 6 months?
I didn't, I actually made it very open-ended. I thought I might be gone longer, but I was like, I can't have a return date because I don't really know. And I know that it may be, it's not going to be a month. So I tried to leave it as open-ended as I could. And, so it ended up being 6 months, more so because I came to a point where I was like, I'm actually ready to go home. I'm surprised I'm ready to go home, but this is the call I feel. So I'm going to honor that and go home. And then I chose South America. My parents and I actually lived in Brazil when I was a baby.
Okay.
And so I had this idea that I wanted to go see the city that we lived in together. And I took a very roundabout way of getting there. I didn't go straight there. I started in Ecuador and then went down to Peru and Bolivia and then into Brazil. But that was sort of the pilgrimage to go back to this place that, we moved there right after I was born. So that was where I spent my earliest years. Yeah.
Are
So
you
that was,
bilingual? I have that question too.
yeah. Well, I can speak some Spanish. I never picked up the Portuguese. I was too young.
Okay.
But when we moved to Spain right after Brazil, and so that was one of my, English and Spanish were my early languages. So I can make it through a conversation and understand probably 80% of it, but I wouldn't call myself fluent by any stretch of the imagination.
But when you're little like that, it sticks. So
Yeah.
that's part of why I wondered. Okay, so
Yeah.
here you are traipsing off, and then you were ready to come home. When you came home, did you go back to any of the old habits and the old places, or were you too changed to be able to do that?
Great question. I actually had intended to start a mediation business. And because it was part of what I was doing in my previous roles. And at the same time, the writing stuff, was kind of bubbling up. And so I went with the mediation work because it was, it was comfortable. I knew what to do. And I did love it. And I still enjoy mediation. I think it's beautiful, but it wasn't getting any traction. And so at one point, this is kind of a funny story. I was at a leadership development program, and I think everyone else in this program was employed. And I was the only one who was an entrepreneur, a little baby entrepreneur.
Right.
And so they had this speaker who was extremely bombastic, and he was talking about like how you introduce yourself and how you present yourself. And he just went off on this, like, how do you say the place you work or what you do? And he started pointing at everyone in the room, like, where do you work? Where do you work? Where do you work? And like waiting for the response. And I just started cringing inside. I was like, oh my God, he's going to say, where do you work? And I've got what? What am I saying? And for whatever reason, I was the last person he called on. And he goes, what do you do? And I just was like, oh God, that's a funny moment, isn't it? And I said, introduced myself as a mediator to like previously. I was like, this is a moment. I'm obviously being called on. This is a moment. I'm a writer. That's what I'm going to say. And from that point on, I was like, okay, so I'm going to leave beside the thing that isn't really going anywhere. And I'm going to go with the profession that is calling me and has a lot of energy behind it.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Okay, so your book is called Writing on Purpose. I love the cover. It's very simple. It's very eye-catching. It's white background, just black letters for those of you that need to go get the book. So go get the book. Writing on Purpose. How have you taken all the things that you've learned and turned it into something tangible? What's your goal with that?
Yeah. So let's talk about the how first. I think when people think about writing a book, they think like, oh, they think in terms of how you read a book, which is starting with the introduction or the preface, the early pages, and then you go from like very linearly, right?
Yeah.
And that just is not how the book is ever written. I have
No.
honestly not seen that work for any author except for one, and he was unusual. So so I'll say, that my book did not get written that way. It was, I would have an interaction with a client and I would learn either a really great lesson or a really hard lesson, or I'd
Mm.
watch them learn a hard lesson. And I would say, I've got to write about this. So it really started out as like, I've got to write the story. And then what would I say if someone's going to come ask me about this again in the future? So in that way, it's turned into short articles that were, I mean, I'd say like 1,500 to 2,000 word articles. And then after a few years, I had probably 20 and started to sense like there's something here. How would I start to hang these together, and how are they changing over time, right? Because
Yeah.
I might write something 5 years ago that I may feel differently about
Sure.
later.
Sure.
So the book developed slowly over time as a collection of thoughts and reactions and observations of my work with my clients. And then I came to it and, started to revisit and say, okay, if I was going to put this into a book form, what does it need to accomplish? And, using that question, I started to pull together some of the other pieces I didn't have and fill in some blanks. And I'll be honest too, this book, I probably started most of these articles somewhere in 2017. And this book went through multiple iterations and sat on the shelf for a while because I wasn't ready to publish it. And by the time I got ready to publish it, it just came out in February. I felt very confident. I was like, you know what? The material in here hasn't changed. Like I'm not going back to these stories and saying, "Oh, I have a different idea now," or I would handle it differently. Like my approach, not that it doesn't change or evolve, but it's to the point where I'm like, I stand by these stories and the outcome that I would suggest. So I feel comfortable and ready to actually put this out as a book. Yeah. And the other piece of it is, this book is, so that's some of the how to wrap that up. The book, one of the things I noticed, there's a lot of books out there about how to write a book, but there are very few who are really, there are a few authors touching this topic who are really talking about the emotional journey of writing a book.
Yeah.
And as you know, it can be amazing. It can kick your ass.
Yes.
Like it can
cathartic.
be,
It's
yes.
painful. It's all the things.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. And it's frequently all of those things in 1 week or in 1 month. And so most of my clients, I started to notice it was not necessarily that they didn't know what to say, although that can be a problem. If you're not ready and you're not clear what to say, that is its own hang up. But let's assume that you've got that. It's the emotional journey that trips people up.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to write a book that not only gave the practical tools, like here's what to do and how to put a book together, but also touches on that emotional journey in a realistic way. So people know, like, oh, I feel kind of deflated right now. She said that was going to happen.
Yeah.
This is normal. I shouldn't take it seriously. I should just give it some time and come back to it.
Ugh, so much power in everything that you just said. And I think the nonlinear part of it is something we have to hang on for a minute because I'm an author coach too. I do have that
Right.
privilege, which I just love. But I also am an adjunct professor and I teach first term master's and doctoral students how to write essentially
Yeah.
because they have to write case studies every term, and this is for educational leadership. And so I teach them how to write a case study, and I teach them to do it non-linearly. Please don't start with the introduction and the summary
Right.
because the introduction and summary is worth 3 points, and you will end up writing 5 pages of something that should be 5 paragraphs. So wait until the end, start over here. And I never really thought about that in conjunction with writing a book, but you're so right. There is nothing linear about how you attack the process because it's about how do I link the things that are going on, and this thing happened before this thing over here, and it's a more of a tapestry
Yeah.
than a page 1 to page 500 kind of experience, right?
Yeah.
So, what advice would you have for somebody that's listening right now that has been saying for years, I should probably write a book? What's the number one thing that you would tell them to go from, I really should, to I'm putting pen to paper?
Yeah. I think there's a couple of points that stop people. So it's tough to say the number one thing, but when I think about where people get stuck, it's a couple of things. It's they immediately start thinking of what it will take to publish the book,
Ah,
right? And publishing, it's such a naughty little, and a naughty like Knotty,
yes.
not the other naughty. It's such a thick question because there are so many if this then that, if this then not that, right?
Yes.
And it's hard to answer that, but they immediately go to the pressures of publishing and getting a publisher. And in my experience, that kind of squashes the creative
I
vibe.
agree.
It is an important question, and it's certainly one that can be answered. But to start there is to like put the cart before the horse, really.
I completely agree with that. Yes.
Yeah. And so it's a little like, so first put aside any notions of publishing. I take one really in-depth collaborative writing, ghostwriting client a year.
Oof.
And my current client is wrapping up, and he was writing a memoir, and he's had an extremely successful career, and he left it and wanted to stop and reflect before he stepped into his new role, into the next role that he takes on. And so for him, he's not even publishing this book. He's made it very clear this actually isn't for anyone but me
Mm.
and my family. And so the question of whether you can write a book or write your story needs to come before whether you publish or anything like that. Especially for people who are actually doing it to do cathartic work.
Yeah.
So I work with a lot of people who have been through some traumatic event or some event that they're kind of hung up on in one way or another. They haven't quite moved past it. And so with those kinds of things, sometimes the exercise is just writing it down and working with the story
Yeah.
to, in effect, rewrite it in a way that they can wrap themselves around it and then move on. And they get through that. And after that, they're like, you know what? I'm ready to put this story aside. I
Mm.
don't need to publish it. Or maybe I'll share it with this person or this group of people, but I don't need to put it into a book form. So I think, putting aside questions of what you're going to do with it is a good move first. And when you said just putting pen to paper, it sounds trite, but it is a little like sometimes you just have to start.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to say, I have an hour of free time right now, and I'm going to sit and put my pen to the paper.
Yeah.
And I'm going to see what it's like to get going.
Yeah.
And I think the other piece I'll say about that is having someone whether that's a coach or a guide or someone else in your life who is very supportive, and telling them, I really want to write this story. There's a lot of research studies that show even just saying to someone like, this is my intention, gets you much further down the road towards actually accomplishing that. So that would be where I would start with people, is like trying to remove the things that are hanging them up, which is publishing, which is like, hey, if I have an hour to write, I'm going to have to finish this. It's like, no, maybe you get an hour in and you actually don't want to write it.
Yeah.
Maybe you actually want to speak it. And we'll see that a lot too. People think they want to write, and then what they actually need to do is tell the story.
Yeah.
And storytelling is like an entirely different art, but related.
Yes.
And so, it's sort of this like, get your feet a little wet and decide if you want to get any further into the pool before jumping in to the deep end.
I love that, Sarah. Thank you. And I think it really boils down to just start. Just start. I know for me, when I put my book together, I did it in OneNote because we were using Microsoft at the time. I was comfortable with it, whatever. But part of what allowed me to get past myself was that I could throw things in folders, right? Like I could put them kind of like you would in a physical binder, but it wasn't printed. It was online. And I was able to throw things in where I thought they might go. And then when I felt led to actually do the writing, I was able to take all those thoughts that were there together about this thing and put them into some sort of something that people could follow. That helped me a ton because I'm not linear in how I see things. And I had no idea how my chapters were going to come together. And that was okay. It gave me permission. So I think the other thing I heard you say is that give yourself permission to just live in that particular part of the end product before you feel like you have to have an end product.
Yes. completely. That's
I love
spot
that.
on. Mhm.
Okay, so I have a question that might feel out of left field, and then I have to ask you my favorite question. But what is your experience with and take on how AI is going to shift the writing world? Because it certainly looks different than when I wrote my book in 2020,
Yeah.
and I know it's going to continue to look different.
Yeah. Oh, this is a huge question. I will try not to ramble, but I am super interested in AI and what it will do to and for writing. So I'll say this, when ChatGPT first came on board, right, on the
Yeah.
scene, obviously writers freaked out.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And they're still freaking out. But I wasn't in freelance work by the time. By that time, I was doing like long form projects focused on books, things like that. So I'm not doing articles. But I had friends who were, and it was within 2 months that it was already changing that market drastically.
Sure.
And I won't go into how here because it's a long story, but it was very clear like this just equalized the playing field for people who were trying to do article work, but were at a disadvantage because they spoke a different language
Mm,
or weren't as proficient. Like ChatGPT basically raised their bar very easily
yeah.
and affordably. Like they could afford to say, well, it just took me 20 minutes to write this set of articles. So I'm only going to charge you $10 for
Yeah.
this article. And maybe they also live in a country with a lower cost of living,
Right.
while the US based writers are charging $45 an hour
Yeah.
to fully write out this article. And so it was very interesting right away that this was already changing the landscape. And it has continued to change the landscape. With books, it's a little bit more of a slow bleed. Like no
Mm,
one in books I know is talking about how they're using AI. And I think it's partly because they're scared
yeah.
to talk about it.
Yeah.
I think partly because there's a lot of learning curve. I've spent a lot of time figuring out how to use AI in book writing.
Mhm.
And the truth is, people, I'll have clients say, well, can't I just write it in AI and then you look it over? And I'm like, if you spent any time trying to write a book in AI, you would know it doesn't work.
No. No, you can't
Um,
just say, write me a book about. Like, it's
no,
not. No.
if you can't even say, write me a chapter, it
Yeah.
doesn't work. You have to control the inputs and the outputs so sincerely that the only thing I've really noticed is that it's like a brain saver. Like
Yes.
with some tasks and some work, it may not save me time, but it is saving me strain.
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
right. And then you have to think about, is the quality the same or better? I don't know. If it needs to be a certain kind of quality, I probably better have a tighter control.
Right.
If it's a looser article, you know, that's a different thing. But with book writing, it's just people, it's not set it and forget it. And so people don't realize that unless you are used to, someone said, it's really the professional writers who will benefit the most from Chat GPT
Yeah.
because they know what good writing is and
Right.
how to edit and where things go wrong. Where the amateur who doesn't have that skill set is going to look at a chapter, I'm saying this in quotes,
Yeah.
and say, well, that's probably okay, and not realize just how bad it is or
Yeah.
just how vague it is. Because Chat GPT or Claude get really vague and they get very repetitive. And I'll also say I'm on Substack, and what I was just on this morning, and I looked at 3 different notes, which is like, a post.
Sure.
If you are using AI enough, you start to pick up on the language constructs that it uses.
Yes.
And all 3 notes I saw the very first thing, it was like, these are all written by AI.
Yeah.
And it's not original anymore.
No.
And it brings me no joy. I would rather read your typos and your crappy ideas
Yes.
than this like drivel with too many M dashes
Yes.
and, question marks where they don't need it, question marks. And so I think AI is and will change the landscape, but we're going to see so much crap in the meantime.
I agree
And
with
so,
you. I agree
yeah,
with you. And that's what I've seen. And yet, like, so I do dissertation work too, right? And so
cool.
when you are trying to figure out a better way to say X or this is a passive sentence, can you turn it into an active one? Those
Yeah.
kinds of things. It like you said, it eliminates some of the brain suck. I
Yes.
just can't figure out another way to say this right now. And I'm going to waste my next 20 minutes trying to instead of writing and being creative and getting it out. And that's I think that's where people get most stuck is in those
Yeah.
little things. Like, how do I say this sentence differently? I don't want to start with this. That's where you really can see some benefit. But I agree with you. You have to already be pretty darn proficient
Yeah.
before it doesn't
It's
just,
going to be used.
yeah,
Yeah.
yuck.
So I love that. I use it for the same things. My weakest areas as a writer are consistently transitions between ideas. And I don't know why, but I know that about myself. And so sometimes when I can't figure out a great way to land it, that's how I'll use it.
Yeah.
And another one that I've loved from my partner suggested this. I was writing a post. I think I was reacting to some news item and I was writing a social media post. And I got through it and I was like, I don't know if I should post this. And he goes, why don't you just ask chat to point out your logical errors? Like point out your logical
Yeah.
errors, yeah, or fallacies. And I put it in and there were like 5 or 6. And it was not a long post. So it was very like
Oh
emotionally,
gosh.
and I was like, okay, so,
Thank you, chat.
so I said, yeah, I'm just not going to post this. We're going to just put it aside. But it's a great tool for like checking yourself.
Yeah.
Like, hey, do I have this right? Am I making some leaps here that don't connect?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Um,
it's great to it's great to play with. I think it just needs guardrails.
Yeah, guardrails are a really good way to say that. All right, so I haven't asked you my favorite question yet. It's just we were talking too many wonderful things, but I love to ask because I have yet to get exactly the same answer twice, and that's how would you describe productive joy?
Yeah, I think productive joy to me sounds similar to something I experience that is usually referred to as flow.
Yes.
Right? So when I'm feeling productive joy, I have been creative, generative, and maybe that creative and generative has also already directly helped someone. And I've seen the impact of that in some way or another. And it's definitely a feeling of free flowing, right? I'm not grinding it out at my keyboard. I'm not trying to eke out another sentence. It's all coming very naturally. So I would say flow and ease would be how I would describe productive joy.
I love that. Well, and I have heard flow before, and I could not agree more. When you get in that moment of it's just happening and I
Yeah.
don't have to labor over it, that is to me very, very much productively joyful.
Yeah.
I have to go back to something you said earlier because you used a word that I have to put into my vocabulary more often, and that was the word bombastic. I that is not one I use very often, but I love that descriptor, and it's clear you're a writer because those are the kinds of things that writers have in at their disposal at all times. So I just wanted to circle back to your bombastic comment because it brought me joy. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was random and yet made me very, very happy. So
It's a great word.
yeah, it is a great word, and I am literally starring it on my page as we speak. So backing up, you've got this wonderful book, Writing on Purpose. How would somebody find you? What's the best way for Sara to be discovered?
Yeah. So probably my website is the best way to get in touch with me. sarastibitz.com. I know my last name is rough, but you could Google Sara Stibitz ghostwriter and I will probably come up. So that will be okay too. And then if you're just looking for the book, you could go to Amazon and search for Writing on Purpose.
Love it.
And I don't believe you'll come up with any other book, but that should be it.
That's perfect. Well, and I did one round of ghostwriting. I will never do that again. That is a gift I was not given, and I learned so much about myself and so little about the other situation. Like it was so many things. So hats off
Yeah.
to you because you're trying to put yourself into somebody else's space and
Yeah.
if they can't articulate where they're trying to head, you will never hit that darn target. And so,
Yes.
yeah, it's so well done on you. I see why
Well, you
have
nailed it
one.
though. Like that is the big thing when people don't know. So aside from emotional stumbling blocks, when people don't know what they want to say, no ghostwriter is going to unless part of the project includes clarifying what you're trying to say, which is an entirely different step. Doing that mid-project is a nightmare.
Yes, especially when they thought this was the direction they wanted to go, and then you're
Right.
like, we're going to go over here. It's like, no, that's not. We've written an entire book already. What are you doing? Yeah.
Yes.
It was a humbling experience, one I don't care to repeat, but I have learned. So can check that right off the box. All right. I could talk to you all day, Sarah. You are delightful. And yet I know people won't listen all day. So I do have some rapid fire questions for you. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. First question. What's your definition of fun?
Laughter.
Laughter. I do love a good belly laugh. That's perfect.
Yeah.
How do you know that you are showing up as your authentic self?
Mm. Good question. I'd say that's like a bodily feeling of joy, warmth, gratitude. It's not something I experience in my head. It's something in my body.
Hmm. Yeah. That's, yeah. I really like that answer. Good answer. Good answer. Okay. How do you channel your best self on your worst days?
Mm. Usually I need a little bit of space and time to kind of reset. So whether that's through prayer or just sitting in meditation or being outside, having a minute to reset and reorient is usually how I will get into a better space.
I would agree with that. That happened to me just last week where I was so pent up after a meeting that I was like, okay, I am not my best self right this minute. And I took a walk and called a friend and vented and walked up and down my sidewalk. My neighbors probably thought I had lost my ever loving mind, but I was so much better when I came back in, right? There shouldn't be bad days. Bad moments are fine, but we shouldn't carry it all day long. And getting outside helps. Okay, great answer.
Yeah.
Sorry, I
I
made
think
your rapid fire long.
oh,
That's
I would
fine.
also love to add music though. Let's
Oh,
add music to that list. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. What's your go-to? Do you have a go-to?
It's more like what playlist am I listening
Uh,
to at the time? So right now my playlist has a lot of Dirty Heads on it, which is like a reggae
that's
band.
pretty great.
Yeah, and then Doechii, the rap singer.
Yeah, love
Yeah.
it. So then this is random, but I have a motivational email that I send out every day. I have sent it for 9 years now, maybe even 10,
Wow.
to mostly people in my organization. And we do a different 30-day challenge every month. And this month's challenge happens to be 90s dance music. So it every day has a different dance song from the 90s. And somebody somewhere made a playlist of all of the songs that are listed. So you can actually go to the 90s playlist. It was actually the May challenge. I know that we are now in August, but it was the May challenge. And the joy it has brought just to hear some of these ridiculous songs that we used to dance to. So I hear you. I appreciate it. I love it. Okay, last question, tough question. People by nature are going to hold on to one major thing that you said. That's about all our brains can hold. And so if you could hand them the one thing that you really want them to hold, what do you want them to hold on to from today?
I would say that if you've been secretly dreaming of writing your book, that hopefully this serves as your sign that it's time for you to start bringing out the legacy that's hiding inside of you and put pen to paper or keys to keyboard and start getting down some of your thoughts, ideas, and stories.
I love that. That's beautiful. Sarah, thank you. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for sharing your expertise in a book that we can go get, Writing on Purpose, to literally just start, right? Because we do all have a story to tell, and we're the only one that can tell it. So I am grateful for people like you who are helping people get the story from in here to the world, because we all need a little more of that, right?
Yeah. And thank you for having me. And thank you for your infectious joy and excitement and for sharing it with the world.
Yay! Well, I am having a blast, and I hope that you did too. So, listeners, thank you for sticking with us, for joining us for another episode of Productive Joy. Go find Sarah. She's amazing, and she has the tools that you need so that you don't have to struggle, which is the beautiful part of all of this, right? We can learn from other people, which is exactly what I would use to define productive joy, is recognizing that the brilliance is all around us. We just have to listen. So, thank you for being here today, and thank you for listening. And for all of my listeners, you know I'm going to challenge you. Grab one nugget of wisdom that you can use and then figure out a way to turn fun into action.